There's been a research that's come out to talk about what we should be talking about with undecided voters.
This is what I read, and I believe it to be true. No matter who you are, if you're undecided, someone trying to take away your Social Security, they don't care who you are. They don't like it, and they will vote to save those things because they understand what they are.
What are Republicans focused on? Ending Social Security. How do we know that? They put it in writing.
And I want to remind you, you paid for your Social Security. Every single paycheck from the time you're a kid, you paid for it.
Imagine all of these people that have been paying into Social Security for years, and then Rick Scott comes along and says, let's sunset Social Security so that it ends. These people are going to riot. They're going to riot.
They made a promise. They made a promise to us. That is that when we fork over this money, and by the way, we don't have a choice, right? Most jobs, they just take it out, that we're going to be able to retire one day. And this is going to help. Some people, by the way, are solely dependent on Social Security. They have no other retirement funds. Can you imagine if it went away, how many people we'd have in poorhouses?
And what we would have are more people in prison. That is the consequence of taking Social Security away from people at the poverty line or below the poverty line. They are going to be without money that they need. They are going to turn to activities that allow them to regain either the money that they need to live, or they're just going to bliss themselves out on drugs. That's what happens when Social Security goes away. This is an attack on people who live at the poverty line or below the poverty line. It is a way to extinguish them from the American fabric, from the American consciousness. We will throw them into jail. We will take away their rights to vote. And we will do this by stealing away everything that they need to survive on a day-to-day basis.
It's mind-boggling to me. And so, and what I don't understand is why we're not talking more about it. And I think that Democrats are so honest in some spaces that if they think they have to answer any question about something, well, what is the long story? Well, there is a long story. The story is that it's going to run out, but there are things that you can do to make sure that it's protected. It's probably not giving it to the private sector to run for you. Yeah, that probably isn't the answer. And so people would certainly feel much safer if they know. I mean, we trust the federal government for a lot of things, and people might not want to admit it, but we really do. And certainly if you were doing the civil rights movement or had to deal with some of the states' rights and laws that they're trying to put into place right now, most people would certainly believe that you want the federal government to have some control to make sure that people are treated fairly and equally, and that you're not taking my money, and that you're doing the things the right way. So I think we have to just start to lean into some of these things and say, this is what's at stake. So if I'm in a community much like mine, and I'm going to be on the Eastern Shore, I will say something like, if they're younger, I'll say, did your mom get Social Security? Anybody in your family? And they go, yeah. And I was like, well, I know that you think it's important to protect them. Let me tell you what's going to happen if Republicans should win. You've paid into it. You understand how important it is. It's our lifeblood here. And I say, don't take my mama's Social Security. And, they start to laugh about that a little bit. But that's what I say. I'm fighting for my mama's Social Security and mine when it's time. As we've all gotten smarter over the last few years, we really see that they've been thinking about all of these things for a really long time. And so what I think is, though I give a lot of credit to Social Security, I do think that it is flawed and that it needs some help. And I'll give you a perfect example. So remember that there are so many things that we talk about now that were not available to Black people when they first started. The GI Bill. Of course, they came back, and the GI Bill, if you were Black and you served in World War II, you didn't get any. You didn't get a GI Bill. In fact, it was hard for you to buy a home. You had to do it on contracts and with the kindness of white people. Banks didn't make you loans. When they did Social Security, we didn't originally get that. It didn't count for people who worked who worked in the field, or for domestic workers. It didn't include them. And you can go through, and there's probably about 10 or 12 pieces of legislation. Welfare wasn't initially done for Black women. They didn't get it. It was for white women who didn't have husbands, or their husbands passed away. We didn't get it. So there are so many things that were never intended for us in the first place. And so even with Social Security today, as small as it is for many people who didn't have jobs that paid a lot of money, they do try to balance it. So I do think that there are things that we have to think about doing that are really going to affect people in a different way. Social Security is the best we got now. And all I tell people who are struggling with trying to figure out if I'm going to vote, should I vote? My vote doesn't matter. I just say your vote is just buying time, and we just keep buying time until we get it right. So it's hard to stay optimistic, but it's all we got.